Welcome back to another episode of the Trauma Queen podcast. I am your host, Jessica Ella, and today's episode is like no other. I've never recorded an episode like this before. In this episode, I will be speaking to my dad, and not literally, he's not joining the session, but my dad is the type of person who would, out of morbid curiosity, listen to every episode that I record and everything that I record everywhere. And I know that he is the kind of person that would be keeping tabs on me, on what I'm saying, and would be listening just to know what I'm saying. And it was actually my beautiful partner, Gav's, idea to record this episode to be able to say what I want to say to my dad so that I can get it all off of my chest and know that it's out there in the world saying what I want to say to him. So forgive me if this episode is a little bit emotional, if it's a little bit up and down. I may get a little bit lost. There are so many things that I want to say and a lot of conflicting feelings. And I appreciate you just being here and listening. This episode is for my dad, but for anybody who wants to listen, I'm sure that there's going to be some things in here that you will, if you have been abused by your father, be able to relate to or understand, and just a bit more of an understanding of what my perception of him is and my relationship to him. In obviously he is not in my life, but my relationship to him in my mind is as well. So dad, it's weird calling you dad because you don't necessarily fit the stereotype version of a dad, but I won't say your name, and I'm not going to not say your name, your first name or your last name, because I want to protect you. It's not because I don't want to drag your name through the mud and plaster it everywhere, because trust me, that has definitely crossed my mind. It's because I'm terrified. It's because you terrified me into silence, and I'm speaking out now, but I'm keeping your name and everything anonymous because I'm terrified of what you would do if you felt threatened, if you felt like people knew that it was you and you felt threatened by this situation. And so selfishly, I don't expose that information because I don't want to feel unsafe. And the reality is, you tortured me, you terrified me, you psychologically abused me from such a young age, suffocating me with a pillow, torturing me with that other family member. I know you know what I'm talking about. I haven't spoken about that publicly yet. I know you know what I'm talking about. The constant death threats, telling me where you would bury me in the backyard. All of that has definitely built up, as well as what I've learned about who you are and how dangerous you are. Because of those reasons, not because I'm trying to protect you, because of those reasons, I won't be ever exposing your identity. The same reasons I won't be going to court, because you've done a really good job at terrifying me. If you've done anything, that's what you've done a good job at. As far as parenting goes, can't really speak to much else good that you've done. You literally criticized me for everything, to the point where my self-image and my self-worth was so low. Like, I've never seen someone with as low a self-worth as I had by the time I hit my teens and 20s, and that was because of you. You made me feel like I was a worthless piece of shit. And of everything that you did, and there are so many fucked up things that you did, that one really lasted the longest, because I truly believed that I didn't deserve love. Because to me, love was abuse. So all I believed that I deserved was abuse, and I continued that cycle. And you would actually tell me that I was stupid for getting into certain relationships, or that I needed to be more wary of certain people because they were abusive, when in reality they were a reflection of you. They were a reflection of the relationship that I had with you. You created that foundation. I developed Stockholm syndrome with you. I loved you excessively, and this is probably the hardest part. I loved you so much. And I didn't know, by the time I started healing, I didn't know if I loved you because you were my dad and because it was just normal, or whether the way that I loved you was wrong. I didn't know because I didn't know any different. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I loved you even when you abused me, tortured me, physically hit me, slapped me across the face, screamed in my face, screamed abuse at me, sexually abused me so many times, raped me. I just kept loving you. I just kept loving you blindly and just hoping that you would change, hoping that the good version of you would come back, because there was a good version of you. You did do some fatherly things. I remember pancakes on Sunday mornings. I remember you playing guitar to us to fall asleep. And I remember you camping with us out in the backyard, having backyard campfires and looking at the stars. I remember all those things, but I almost wish that you didn't do those things. I almost wish that you were all bad, because this was the hardest thing to heal from. The hardest thing was that I saw the good. The hardest thing was that I saw remorse. The hardest thing was that I saw regret in what you had done, and I saw the good side of you, and so I just kept hoping that that was going to come back out. It would have been easier if you were all evil 24/7. It would have been easier if you were evil every time, but I didn't know what I was going to get, therefore I was living on edge forever. I thought that I actually grew up thinking that it was normal to love your dad in a romantic way. I had a belief tucked away in my subconscious that I was your wife and that I had to look after you and do things for you that a wife does. And I remember you punishing me for that. I remember you saying to me, you're not my partner, you're not my wife, don't act like that, when I was a teenager or 12, 13 years old. And you used to punish me for the things that you created. I remember asking you once for our special time after you had treated me so poorly, because it was all that I knew as love. It was the only thing. I was grasping at straws to try and get a little bit of your love, and I asked you for the abuse because I was so conditioned by that point that love was abuse, that's what love was. So I asked you for it, and then what did you do? You punished me. You shamed me. You told me I was disgusting and I was wrong and that I should never ask for that. The thing that you conditioned me to want, the thing that you conditioned me to think was normal. Psychological torture. I was so confused, and I just kept loving you. I kept hoping for the good. I kept hoping it was going to be a good day. I kept hoping that I was going to get good dad that day. And this was the hardest thing to heal from. I spent months grieving good dad. I spent months crying. I spent months just grieving you, just grieving that good version of you that I held on to, that was dying in my mind because it wasn't real, because I held on to those good memories to just stop me from thinking about all the bad. And one thing that lingers with me, one thing that just constantly lingers with me, is the day that you apologized. River was 2 years old, and I'd brought him down to meet you out at an oval to kick the footy to visit you. And you didn't see the boys much when they were little. I'm thinking now that was probably self-preservation, that you didn't want to be around them because you thought that I wouldn't want you around them. At that point, I didn't remember, but I definitely never left them alone with you, which is a good thing. But you definitely pulled away, and this was one of the rare visits. And I remember kicking the footy with you and him, and you got teary, and you came over to me and you said, "I'm sorry." And instantly I felt sick. My whole body, every cell in my body recoiled, because I was not capable of going into that conversation. I had flashbacks and I knew what you were talking about, but I just couldn't consciously comprehend it or have that conversation. And so I said, no, it's fine. And I shut down the conversation, and you said, "No, I'm really sorry for everything that I did to you." And I'm like, no, you didn't do anything. What do you mean? It's fine. Don't worry about it. And I shut it down. And I think about that day often, because I think, what would have happened if I was in a place where I could have had that conversation with you? I wonder what you would have said if we sat down, if you had to actually apologize if you explained what was happening, if you offered to go and get yourself help. I often wonder about that, but I think that that's the part of me that is a hopeful, diehard optimistic. I see the best in everybody. And I used to think that this was a negative thing. I see the positives in everybody and I give people a million chances. And I actually love that about myself because I think that's what actually got me through and allowed me to survive. Because if I had have just held on to all of the hate and pain, I don't think I would have lived very long. So this eternal optimism is what's causing me to think that maybe if you were ready to apologize that day, that one day you will come forward and apologize and take some accountability and get some therapy and just heal yourself. Not that that would mean that we could have a relationship because it is too far gone, but just for yourself, for the world. But I also think about the fact that, you know, you had that letter that I wrote you that day that you, again, I think you'd read my diary and you were terrifying me into staying quiet and you trashed my room and you punched walls and terrified me and I ran away and I wrote you that chaotic letter. And you had that as your screensaver, like 8 years ago. You had that as your screensaver and I just feel like you were constantly having to remind yourself that you were in control of me, that I had repressed it, that I had somehow forgotten and that I wasn't going to say anything and that I was still excessively loving you. So the fact that you have that as your screensaver tells me that you probably, and the way that you responded when I came forward with everything was very typical, the way that I thought you would respond by calling everybody and turning everybody against me. Because apparently abusing me for my entire childhood and early teens/20s wasn't enough. And you then had to go and make that even more difficult by getting other family members against me and by them then sending me threats and just making my life a living hell. And to be honest, you probably see the shiny version on social media, but what you don't see is that I had a complete nervous breakdown. I was convinced every car that drove past the house that you were coming for me. I was so convinced that you were coming to kill me. I was in the shower and I heard your voice. I heard you screaming my name coming through the front door. I heard the door slam and I heard you screaming my name and I grabbed a towel and ran into the backyard. And it took me 5 minutes to realize that I was hallucinating. It took me 5 minutes to realize that I had been pushed to the point of absolute breakdown from being terrified 24/7. I was in the supermarket, 2 little kids at home, and I was in the aisle and I heard you at the end of the aisle, again screaming my name, coming for me, and I ran through the supermarket like a crazy person because I thought you were in the supermarket chasing me. I was that terrified because of what you did. And I know you know what day I'm talking about. I know you know that day, and I actually know too. I haven't shared that day publicly yet, but I know you know that that day was too far. That day, I know that the other family member was the instigator of this and that you were terrified of him and that you were going along with it because you felt like you couldn't. But I know that that was too far even for you. The torture, the things that you did to me that day, they haunted, not anymore, but they haunted me. And I can only imagine the way that they would be haunting you too. But I know from that day, the only thing that gives me peace from that day, Dad, is that you were terrified for my life. I remember you saying, "That's enough, stop, she's going to die, you're going to actually kill her." I remember you saying that. And I remember when I was crying and I was begging you to stop, you were looking over at this person and you were looking at me and I could tell in your eyes that you didn't want to do it. But you did do it anyway. And that was too far. It was way too far. It was sadistic. It was so mind-bending and fucked up. I just can't believe that you could do all of those things to your own daughter. I'm your daughter. I'm your blood. I don't understand how you could do that or let him do that to your own daughter. But that day really influenced my level of fear. That day was driving me to insanity for such a long time because it was just, this was part of the reason why I was so scared to speak out. It was part of my nervous breakdown. It was part of everything because I was so terrified of what you could do to me that day and what you're capable of. And I wish more than anything that you could say to me, Jess, I wish the one thing that you could give to me as my dad, if you actually cared, is that you would say to me, I'm not going to come for you. I'm never going to come for you or the boys. I promise I'll never come for you. I won't kill you. That's all I want. Just that one line. Just, I'm not going to do that so that I can live in peace. I know you would be pissed off that I'm sharing all of this. I know you'd be pissed off because I'm exposing you and I'm exposing the truth, but you did it. So you need to take some accountability. I just wish the one thing that you could give me in this life, the only thing that you could give me is just for the rest of my days knowing that you're not going to do that, because it's the one thing that I can't move past. It's the one thing that always comes up is he coming? When's he coming? Because you've done so much evil that I can never be 100% sure. So if you are listening, I beg you, like I begged you that day, to just give this to me. Just this one thing. But you probably aren't. And unfortunately, the only way that I'm ever going to feel that level of safety is the day that you die. And because of everything that you have done, because of the way that you have treated me, because of the horrific things that you have done to me, you might play them down in your mind, but the torture, the rape, the abuse, the way that you treated me, the up and down, the confusion, the constant criticism, like, it was awful. It was disgusting. And because of this, because you're probably never going to give me this, I can't wait for the day that you die. I can't wait for the day that somebody tells me your dad is dead, because I will feel the feeling of freedom. I'll finally feel free because I do everything I can to feel free. I have done everything that I can. I've set myself free in so many ways in my mind, from memories, from processing memories. I'm trying to feel more time free, financially free, free in motherhood, free in every way possible, but there is always something holding me back, and it's this safety. And I'm not going to feel that until you're dead. So until you give me that, I just can't wait for the day that I find out that you've died, so that I can feel that. And I'm guessing you probably felt that. You were probably conflicted, but I'm guessing that you probably felt that the day that your father died, because he was an evil man. And you might get pissed off at me saying that, but I like to think of you as 20% good, 80% evil, and he's 100% evil. And I know you know what he did, and I know what he would have done to you. I know what kind of man he was. I've done the research. I know what he did early on in his life, before he even came to Australia. I know so much about that man now that is, I can't even understand how you still had him in your life. I know you fell out with him a lot of times. I can't even understand how you let him around your children. But I also understand how trauma works, and I also understand the way that I was intensely trauma bonded to you. You may think that it was easy for me to cut you out, sending you the message and then going no contact, but as I mentioned before, it was extremely difficult. I wanted to run to you. I didn't know any other way than to, when I was feeling that level of fear and panic, to run to the person who was abusing me. I just knew that safety and fear came from the same source, and it was very confusing when I cut you out. I wanted to run to you so many times. I wrote you that letter. I was very confused. I really did grieve you. But I always think of Tony Robbins, and I always think about, if you're going to blame somebody, you have to also thank them. And I'm definitely not going to thank you. I'm going to thank myself. I'm going to thank myself because I have this power in me that you never had. I have this strength in me that you never had, to be able to break the cycle, to be able to never treat my children or anybody the way that you treated me. And I owe a lot of this to my mum, who you also treated so poorly and abused. and still did up to a couple of years ago, terrifying her. I owe it to her because she was constant love. Even when I was awful to her, even when I took out all my emotions on her because I couldn't take them out on you because that would result in pain and punishment, she just kept loving me all the way through. And I owe where I'm at a portion of it to her, a lot to myself, to my power, to my strength, to this inner strength that I've always had, but I do owe some to her, to that constant love and support. And you tried so hard to turn me against her. You tried so hard to tarnish the way that we viewed her. You tried so hard to make her the bad guy, to tell me that she was weak and pathetic, that she could do nothing, so that I wouldn't tell her what was happening. But she isn't weak and pathetic, and I'm sure you would have seen that her and me and Kayla have written a children's book to try and protect children from people like you. People who look good from the outside, people who cover their tracks so well, who live a whole life that people know nothing about, from people who groom and who know how to groom, who study psychology like you did, who study sociopaths, who study the mind, who study mind manipulation, who know how to do it well and fool everybody around them. We've written a book to save children from people like that, and they're stronger because of it too. They're stronger now too. And I'm sure you see that and you roll your eyes, but I'm also sure that there is that tiny 20% good part in you that sees what I'm doing, that sees the work that I'm doing, that sees what we're doing with this, trying to change the world, trying to make a change, trying to make a difference. And I just think if I want anything from this, I don't need anything from you. I don't, in the way that I feel like I don't grieve you anymore. I don't think about you very often. I live my life on social media and I post my things and tell my story, but day to day I have a great life and I've built that for myself. The only things that I really wanted to say to you in this was just that, I guess, asking you for that safety, asking you to give me that peace of mind, asking you to just tell me that you're not coming for me so that I can feel safe. But yes, as I said, you're probably not going to ever do that. People often see the empathy that I have towards you and towards any abusers as a negative thing, but I actually think that it's a positive. And it's the result of, I didn't have empathy for you for a long time. I was very angry and really hurting. And empathy has actually come out the other side of all of that shifting. I don't feel a whole lot of anything anymore towards you. I feel a tiny bit of empathy towards the fact that you have lived your whole life in suffering and in struggle and in pain and in, I can only imagine, a chaotic mind. And coming out the other side of that myself and knowing how good life is out the other side, I feel sad that you will probably die the same way, never having actually healed, never having made amends, trying to recover, trying to help the people that you've done wrong, trying to make up for that. You affected so many people's lives. It wasn't just me. You affected other people's lives. You know whose lives. They've all come forward. They haven't spoken to you, but they've come forward to our family about what you did to them too. And I can't understand how you watched each of us, your children and other people, suffer all throughout our lives and just didn't feel guilty for that. For the fact that we were spiraling, that we were in dark holes on antidepressants, going to psychiatrists, trying to figure out what was wrong with us, and you just watched us suffer and struggle. And you didn't take any accountability. And I just wish that people like you could take accountability for what they've done. I wish there was places that you could go, like retreats or, I don't know, workshops or something where you can go and say, I'm having these sick thoughts or I've done these awful things and I want to stop. But unfortunately, nobody's going to do that because they're going to be afraid of going to jail. So I don't see this cycle ever ending, which is why we wrote that children's book, to try and end it from the children's level. But anyway, this is what I wanted to say to you. There's probably a million other things that I want to say to you In the past, I would have wanted to say to you, why did you do this? And why did you do that? And I had a million questions, but over time, I've come to understand why and how generational trauma works and how abuse is passed down and how you can split your personality into two and how you can push those memories to the back and how you can become someone else when you're abusing. And I've learned about the brain of an abuser, and so I actually understand that now. So I don't really need any of those explanations from you. All I really need is that reassurance or confirmation that I'm safe and that I don't have to spend the rest of my life worrying if you're going to come or if you're going to send someone to come. Thank you to everybody that listened through to the end. That was a roller coaster for me, so probably was a roller coaster to listen to. And I will see you again on the next episode, which will hopefully be a little bit more uplifting and productive and cheerful. This episode today had a really clear mission, and normally I'm quite educational and we're upbeat and we're boom boom boom, but today it was a really different tone, and so I appreciate you for being here and for listening, and I will see you next time.